I'm Liam. I'm 28 years old, and my own parents told me I was disposable. Before I tell you how their carefully constructed world imploded the second I walked out that door, do me a favor and let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It's always good to know you're out there listening. It all detonated on a Friday night. One of those brutal Fridays where the work week has ground you down to a nub, and all you crave is the quiet sanctuary of your own space. I pushed open the front door of the house I had literally kept from falling apart with my own two hands, and the rich smell of my mom's pot roast hit me. It was a peace offering, a rare treat she only made when things were tense, though I didn't know why things were tense yet. I dropped my keys into the heavy ceramic bowl on the entryway table, the one I'd bought on a whim 5 years ago because its solid weight felt permanent. Everything seemed normal on the surface, but there was an undercurrent, a strange tension in the air. And then I turned the corner into the living room, and my world tilted on its axis. There, sprawled on the deep blue sofa, my sofa, the one I had meticulously saved for, the one that had cost me a month's salary after the old one's springs finally burst, sat my younger sister, Chloe. She looked perfectly at home. Curled up beside her, with an arm slung possessively over the back of the couch, was her husband, Mark. His expression was a mixture of boredom and smug satisfaction. I froze, my hands still on the doorframe. Chloe was a comet, blazing into our lives at rare intervals before disappearing again. She hadn't been home in over a year. She was the family's golden child, the one who had kissed us all goodbye right after my grandfather's funeral to go chase her shimmering, important dreams, leaving me behind to wade through the wreckage of our family's grief. "Liam, you're home," my mother, Eleanor, chirped, bustling out of the kitchen. She was wiping her hands on her apron, her movements jerky and unnatural. Her smile was stretched a little too tight across her face, a brittle, fragile thing. My father, Richard, emerged from the back porch, wiping his own hands on his pants. His face was a mask of grim resolution, that stony, unreadable expression he always wore when a verdict had been reached and he was about to pronounce the sentence. "Chloe? Mark? What's going on?" I asked, my voice coming out flat and hollow. Chloe disentangled herself from Mark and launched herself at me, enveloping me in a cloud of cloyingly sweet perfume. It was the kind of hug that was all for show. "Big brother, we just needed a little family support. Mark hit a small snag at work, you know how these big corporations can be." "I was laid off," Mark clarified from his throne on the couch, not bothering to make eye contact. He said the words "laid off" as if they were a minor inconvenience, like a missed dental appointment. "Corporate restructuring. Very sudden." My gaze shifted from their unconcerned faces to my parents. The cold, creeping dread that had started in my gut began to snake its way up my spine. This wasn't a surprise visit. This was a hostile takeover. "They're going to be staying with us for a little while," my mother announced, her eyes fixed on a point just over my shoulder, refusing to meet mine. "Just until they get back on their feet." And then my father, ever the pragmatist, delivered the killing blow. He pointed a thumb over his shoulder, a casual, dismissive gesture toward my bedroom, my sanctuary. "Chloe and Mark will take your room. It's the master suite after all. They need the space, the private bath." I stared at him, my mind refusing to process the words. I waited for the punchline, for the "just kidding." It never came. "Okay," I said slowly, forcing the word out. "So, where am I supposed to sleep?" My father shrugged, a gesture of such profound indifference it physically hurt me. "You can clear out the storage room in the basement, or you can move out. Your choice." The air in my lungs turned to ice. The storage room, a windowless, 10 by 10 concrete box filled with rusty paint cans, seasonal decorations, and the lingering smell of mildew. That's what I was worth. My mother stood there, wringing her apron, looking anywhere but at me. It was Chloe who twisted the knife, her voice bright and cheerful, utterly devoid of shame. "Hey, Mom says if you could be out of the room by tomorrow night, that would be amazing. Mark and I want to get a head start on redecorating over the weekend. We're thinking a whole new color scheme. I looked at their faces one by one. My sister, the smiling assassin. My parents, the silent executioners. And in that one, crystallizing moment, something inside me didn't just break. It flash froze. It became hard and cold and clear. I gave a single, slow, deliberate nod. Okay, I said, my voice eerily calm. Okay, I understand. But they didn't understand. They didn't understand at all. They saw me capitulate the same way I always had. They thought they were just moving furniture around. They had no idea they had just demolished their own foundation. 5 years ago, this house wasn't a home. It was a mausoleum, a monument to the man who had built it from the ground up, my grandfather. His heart had given out one Tuesday morning while he was tinkering with the wiring for the new kitchen island, leaving behind a mess of exposed wires, half-installed cabinets, and a silence that was heavier and more suffocating than a physical weight. The funeral was a grim parade of familiar faces contorted by sympathy, plates of baked ziti, and the hollow echo of my own footsteps on the hardwood floors. My mother, Eleanor, was a wraith, moving through the rooms her father had filled with his booming laugh, her hand trailing over his favorite armchair, as if she could still feel his presence there. My father, Richard, had retreated into a fortress of silence, his grief a hard, impenetrable shell. And then there was Chloe. She had cried, of course, but her tears seemed different. They were theatrical, public. 2 days after we had buried Grandpa, I found her in her sun-drenched bedroom, a whirlwind of activity, surrounded by 2 massive, open suitcases. She was humming. Leaving already? I asked, my voice rough. I leaned against the doorframe, the wood cool against my shoulder. I have to Liam, she said, her back to me as she expertly folded a bright yellow sundress. My design internship in the city starts on Monday. It's an incredible opportunity, the kind you can't just pass up. Mom's not doing well, Chloe. She barely eats. Dad hasn't said more than 10 words since the service. I know, and it's just horrible, she sighed, finally turning to face me. Her eyes were wide and full of what I now recognize as calculated sincerity. But I can't just stop my life. Grandpa would have wanted me to go. He always said I was destined for big things. She walked over and put her hands on my arms, her touch light and fleeting. Besides, you're so much better at all this stuff than I am. You know how to handle Dad when he gets quiet. You know what Mom needs. You can take care of them. She said it with such ease, such casual conviction. You can take care of them. It wasn't a request. It was a transfer of responsibility, a burden she was shrugging off her own shoulders and placing squarely onto mine. At the front door, she gave me a quick, air-kissed hug, her suitcases bumping against my legs. Call me every single day and tell me how everyone is, she chirped, a bright, false promise. And then she was gone, climbing into a taxi, leaving behind nothing but the faint scent of her expensive perfume and the weight of the entire world on my shoulders. I was left on the porch, watching the taxi disappear down the street, racing towards her exciting, untethered future. My own future, a promising junior engineer position in Seattle, suddenly felt a million miles away. That evening, the silence in the house was deafening. I found my mother in the kitchen, sitting on an upturned bucket in the middle of the construction zone, just staring at the tangled mess of wires hanging from the ceiling. I can't do this, Liam, she whispered, her voice a fragile thread. I can't live here without him. Every unfinished project, every squeaky floorboard. It's all him. It's too much. I was 23 years old. My dream was packed in a box, waiting for a shipping label. A new life, a great salary, corporate housing, a future I had worked my entire life for. It was all right there, waiting for me. But as I looked at my mother's shattered face and thought of my father, lost in his silent grief, I knew with a gut-wrenching certainty that I couldn't leave. Not yet. I walked over and knelt beside her on the dusty plywood floor. You won't have to do it alone, Mom, I said, my voice thicker than I intended. I'm not going anywhere. I'll stay. I'll finish the kitchen for you. I'll take care of everything. I promise. She collapsed against me, her sobs quiet and desperate, soaking the shoulder of my shirt. That was the moment my future changed. That night, I made the call to the firm in Seattle. I can still hear the disappointment in the hiring manager's voice. I told myself it was a temporary sacrifice, a short-term delay, just until they were stable, just until the gaping wound of grief started to scar over. But temporary is a liar. It's a word that seduces you into sacrifice, and before you know it, 5 years have passed. My promise, made in a dusty, half-finished kitchen, had become the blueprint for my prison. The 5 years that followed weren't lived. They were endured. My life became a monotonous loop of responsibility. I found a decent engineering job with a local firm. It lacked the prestige and the career trajectory of the Seattle position, but it was a 15-minute drive from the house, and that was a necessity. My father's blood pressure became an issue, and my mother developed a fear of driving on the highway. So I was the designated driver for every doctor's appointment, every grocery run, every trip to the pharmacy. My paycheck wasn't my own. It was a household utility. Before I even saw it, it was mentally allocated. A large chunk went directly to the mortgage payment. The loan was in their names, but the funds came from my account via a direct transfer every month. The rest was eaten by property taxes, utilities, insurance, and the ever-growing list of household repairs. When the ancient refrigerator finally died, its last gasp a puddle of lukewarm water on the new tiles I had laid, I was the one who paid for a new one. When a winter storm tore a section of shingles from the roof, I was the one who spent a weekend up on a ladder in the freezing cold, patching it myself to save on the cost of a roofer. I never threw it in their faces. I thought my actions spoke for themselves. I believed, in my naivety, that my sacrifice was a quiet, noble thing that they saw and silently appreciated. But my family doesn't communicate in silent appreciation. Their language is one of criticism and comparison. Every phone call from Chloe was a national holiday. My mother would shout for my father, and they'd huddle around the speakerphone, their faces lit with adoration. "Oh, Chloe, your trip to Napa sounds divine. Did you get that new handbag you were talking about? Your sister's boss thinks she's a genius. He's mentoring her personally. Imagine that." After these calls, a chill would descend on the house. The glow would fade from their faces, and they would look at me as if noticing me for the first time. A drab piece of furniture they'd forgotten was there. The comments, like little paper cuts, would inevitably follow. "You look tired, Liam," my mother would observe while I was trying to decompress after a 10-hour day. "You should try to smile more. Chloe has such a wonderful, bright smile. Your sister is thinking of buying a condo," my father would announce from behind his newspaper. "She's building real equity, building a future." The unspoken accusation hung in the air. "What are you doing with your life?" I once spent an entire month's savings on a new, energy-efficient furnace after the old one was condemned. I installed it myself over a long weekend to save on labor costs. I was bone-tired but proud. That evening at dinner I mentioned it. "Well, the new furnace is in. Should save us a lot on the gas bill this winter." My mother just nodded vaguely. "That's nice, dear." Chloe sent us a picture of a chandelier she's thinking of buying. It's real crystal. The furnace, a vital organ keeping the house alive, was met with indifference. A picture of a chandelier, a frivolous want from 1,000 miles away, was a topic of excited conversation. It was then I realized I wasn't a son to them anymore. I was a function, the Liam function. Pay bills, fix things, be available, and above all, be silent. The resentment wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a slow, quiet construction project happening inside my own chest. Every overlooked sacrifice was a brick. Every cutting comparison was a layer of mortar. Over 5 years, I had built a wall of resentment inside myself so high and so thick, I could no longer remember the person I was on the other side of it. The moment that the hairline cracks in my carefully constructed composure began to spiderweb into something far more serious happened on my 27th birthday. My expectations were not high. I wasn't a kid anymore. I didn't expect a surprise party or a pile of gifts. All I wanted was a small, simple acknowledgement of my existence. A happy birthday over breakfast. Maybe my favorite meal for dinner. A sign that for one day out of 365 I was seen. I woke up that morning and went through my routine. The house was quiet. No one said a word. At work, I told myself they were just waiting for me to get home, probably planning some small surprise. That fragile hope was the only thing that got me through a grueling day of project deadlines. I walked through the front door that evening, my heart beating a little faster with that foolish, childlike anticipation. The house was filled with the smell of takeout pizza. My parents were on the couch watching a game show, pizza boxes balanced on the coffee table. They looked up as I entered. "Oh, Liam, you're home," my mother said, her mouth full. "Grab a slice before it gets cold." "Yeah, long day," I replied, my voice hollow. I waited. My father just grunted in greeting, his eyes glued to the TV. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. My birthday was not a surprise. It was a non-event. It hadn't even registered on their radar. The flickering hope inside me was unceremoniously snuffed out. I went into the kitchen to get a plate, my movements stiff. And then, as if on cue, the phone rang. My mother's face instantly lit up, transforming from bored indifference to radiant joy. "Chloe, sweetheart, we were just talking about you." They hadn't been. "How are you, honey?" Her voice was a fountain of warmth and excitement. I could hear Chloe's effervescent laughter crackling through the phone. "Oh, that's incredible. A senior promotion? Already? Richard, get over here." Chloe got promoted. A senior marketing director. My father was off the couch in an instant, his previous lethargy gone. They huddled over the phone like it was a sacred artifact, showering my sister with a cascade of praise and adoration. A senior promotion. On my birthday. The universe, it seemed, had a dark sense of humor. I stood there by the counter, gripping its edge until my knuckles were white, a forgotten ghost at my own non-existent birthday party. Just then, the back door opened and my Uncle Robert, my dad's younger brother, ambled in. He was a frequent, unannounced visitor. He took in the scene at a glance. My parents fawning over the phone, my rigid posture by the counter, and he understood immediately. He came over and put a heavy hand on my shoulder, his expression a carefully crafted mask of fatherly sympathy. "Tough night, kid?" he said in a low, conspiratorial voice. "Don't let it get to you. You know how they are with her. She's the shiny object." He steered me toward the dining room table, creating a small pocket of privacy. "Listen," he said, leaning in. "It's the curse of the responsible son. You're the bedrock, Liam. You're so dependable they don't even have to think about it. It's like breathing for them. They pour all their worry and energy into her because she's the wild card. In a strange way, their neglect is a testament to your strength. A man's duty is to be the silent pillar that holds the family up. You're doing your duty. You're being a man." His words were like a drug. I wanted to believe them. I needed to believe them. I thought he was the only one who saw me, the only one who understood. But looking back, I realized he wasn't validating me. He was pacifying me. He was the warden of my prison, whispering soothing lies to keep the inmate from rattling the bars. I sat there, listening to the distant sound of my parents celebrating their absent daughter, and a cold, hard certainty settled in my soul. I wasn't the pillar of the family. I was the foundation, buried deep underground, bearing all the weight, and completely invisible. And on that day, I finally truly understood. In that house, shadows don't get to have birthdays. Back to the present. The shock of my father's ultimatum had curdled into a cold, hard stone of resolve in my gut. I spent a restless night in my own bed, feeling like a stranger in my own room. The next morning, the house was already humming with a chaotic, foreign energy. Chloe's energy. I walked into the living room, and it was as if a small tornado had touched down. Chloe's suitcases had exploded, their contents, brightly colored clothes, a bewildering array of shoes, and countless cosmetic bags, were strewn across every available surface. Mark was already firmly entrenched on the sofa. My sofa, his bare feet propped up on the polished wood of my coffee table, tapping away at his phone. He acknowledged my presence with a slight, upward flick of his chin. Chloe was in the kitchen, a whirlwind of motion, issuing orders to my mother. Mom, these old spice jars have to go, and we're definitely going to need to clear out at least 2 of these cabinets for my protein powders and organic snacks. And this coffee maker, she said, pointing a finger at the machine I had bought just last year, is an antique. We need a proper espresso machine. My mother, who would normally question me for half an hour if I so much as moved a salt shaker, was nodding with frantic eagerness. Of course, dear. Whatever you need. We'll make a list. I navigated the obstacle course of their belongings and poured myself a cup of coffee from the antique machine. Tasted bitter. Chloe turned to me then, a tape measure appearing in her hand as if by magic. Liam, perfect timing. I have a question for you. I braced myself, taking a slow sip. What is it, Chloe? I was thinking, she began, tapping the tape measure against her chin thoughtfully, that this wall between the kitchen and the dining room is just so claustrophobic. It should just come down. It would create a wonderful open concept space. You're an engineer, you're good with this kind of stuff, right? How big of a job would that be for you? A weekend. The sheer, unadulterated audacity of it almost made me laugh. She hadn't been in the house for 12 hours, and she was already assigning me a major demolition and renovation project. Not asking, assigning. I have no idea, Chloe, I said, my voice dangerously level. Mark, without looking up from his phone, chimed in. Hey man, while you're at it, the Wi-Fi in our room is a little weak on the far side. You should probably look into getting one of those signal boosters or something. They weren't behaving like guests needing temporary support. They were acting like new homeowners who had just discovered the previous tenant had left behind a live-in handyman. Later that afternoon, I was in my room, staring at the walls, trying to figure out how to distill a life into cardboard boxes, when Chloe swept in without knocking. She was fanning a handful of paint swatches like a deck of cards. Okay, so I'm thinking a nice warm grayish for this room, she announced, holding a swatch against the calm, steady blue I had painted 2 years prior. Something more sophisticated, you know? It'll make my art prints really pop. She tossed the swatches onto my bed. Oh, and speaking of which, I know you said you'd be out by Saturday, but if you could maybe push that up to tomorrow evening, that would be a huge help. Mark and I really want to get a coat of primer on the walls this weekend. I looked from the paint swatches littering my comforter to her bright, expectant, utterly clueless face. It wasn't malice. It was something far worse. It was a complete and total inability to see anyone's needs or existence beyond the bubble of her own desires. My life, my home, my comfort. They were all just logistical hurdles in her redecorating project. I'll be out when I'm out, Chloe, I said, my voice colder than I intended. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Well, fine. No need to be grumpy about it, she huffed, and then she breezed out, leaving the scent of her perfume and the offending paint swatches behind. The screw was tightening. Every entitled request, every casual dismissal, was another turn, building a dangerous pressure inside my chest. They weren't just taking my room. They were trying to erase me. That Saturday afternoon was a special kind of hell. I was a ghost in my own home, packing boxes in silence, while the rest of the family buzzed with excitement. My mother was on the phone, loudly planning the Welcome Home Chloe barbecue for the following weekend, inviting aunts, uncles, and cousins. Oh, it's just wonderful to have her back, I heard her say. The house feels alive again. My father, who usually spent his weekends in stony silence, was actually engaged in conversation with Mark. Mark was pontificating about some cryptocurrency scheme, and my father was nodding along, a look of vicarious excitement on his face. I was not just invisible. My absence was the cause for their celebration. I couldn't stand it anymore. I retreated to the one place they wouldn't follow, the basement. I went into the cold, damp storage room, my proposed new bedroom, and sat on a stack of old newspapers. The air was thick with the smell of dust and decay. This was it. This was the reward for 5 years of unwavering duty and sacrifice. Concrete box. Desperation is a powerful lens. It burns away all the fog of indecision and brings your true options into sharp focus. And in that moment of pure, undiluted despair, a memory sparked. A ghost from 5 years ago. The job offer in Seattle. The firm. The name of the HR manager, Linda. It was a ridiculous, insane long shot. A Hail Mary pass from my own end zone with 1 second left on the clock. But a 1 in a million chance is still a chance. And it was infinitely better than the certainty of this concrete tomb. My fingers, slick with nervous sweat, fumbled with my phone. I found the company's number online, navigated the automated menu, and when a human voice answered, I asked for the HR department. Then, my heart pounding against my ribs, I asked for Linda. I fully expected to be told she no longer worked there. This is she, a calm, professional voice replied. My own voice was a dry croak. Hi, Linda. My name is Liam Evans. You probably don't remember me, but I was offered a position there about 5 years ago. I trailed off, the foolishness of the call washing over me. There was a pause. I could hear the faint click of a keyboard. Liam Evans, she said slowly. From the university recruitment program. Of course, I remember. You interviewed with Mr. Harrison. He was quite taken with your final project. We were all very disappointed when you declined the offer. Mr. Harrison, the CEO. A powerful, intimidating man I had met for all of 30 minutes. Yeah, well, I stammered. I had to stay home for family reasons. Listen, this is gonna sound crazy, but that offer included a corporate housing option. I was just wondering, on the off chance, if that program still exists. I braced for a polite rejection. Instead, the typing continued for a moment, followed by a soft That is very interesting timing, Liam, Linda said, a note of surprise in her voice. Mr. Harrison, the CEO, specifically asked about you last week. My world stopped. He what? Why? Our firms are collaborating on the new downtown tower project. He saw your name on some of the initial structural plans from your company. He recognized it immediately. He remembered your file, told me you were the one that got away. He actually had me pull up your old offer and reactivate it in our system, just in case. He said, and I quote, "A man with that kind of loyalty to his family is exactly the kind of man I want building my skyscrapers." I leaned my head back against the cold, damp concrete wall. The phone pressed hard against my ear. The world outside the basement faded away. It was surreal. A lifeline. Not just a job, but a sign. A sign from a near stranger, a man at the top of his field, who saw more value in me than my own parents did. He saw my sacrifice not as a weakness, but as a strength. Linda, I said, my voice thick with an emotion I couldn't name. It was gratitude. It was shock. It was the first flicker of genuine hope I had felt in half a decade. I would like to formally accept that offer. When can I start? I could hear the smile in her voice. As soon as you can get here, Liam. Welcome aboard. It's about time. I hung up the phone and sat there in the darkness, the faint light from my screen illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. The chill of the basement was gone, replaced by a roaring fire in my chest. A decision hadn't just been made. It had been forged. They wanted me out. Fine, I'd be out. But I would be leaving on my own terms, and I would be taking my whole world with me. After that call, a profound and almost terrifying calm settled over me. The swirling chaos of anger, hurt, and despair solidified into a single, sharp point of purpose. I had a plan. I had a destination. I went back upstairs, my steps lighter than they had been in years. The family was still in their celebratory bubble, now debating what color to paint the living room. They fell silent as I entered, expecting a confrontation, or perhaps more sullen silence. I gave them neither. I stood in the doorway and waited for them to look at me. I've thought about it, I said, my voice clear and even. And you're right. It's for the best if I move out completely. I've made some arrangements. I'll be gone by tomorrow evening. The relief on their faces was a physical thing, a collective exhalation of breath. It was so transparent it was almost insulting. My mother clasped her hands together, a picture of maternal benevolence. Oh, Liam, I think that's a very mature and selfless decision. It's what's best for everyone. Yeah, man, Mark added from the couch, giving me a lazy thumbs up. No hard feelings. We appreciate you being so cool about this. No hard feelings at all, I replied, and the smile I gave them was not forced. It was the genuine smile of a man who held all the cards and knew his opponents didn't even realize they were in a game. They had won, they thought. The dutiful, predictable Liam was going to pack his bags, leave behind the comfortable life he had built for them, and conveniently disappear. They were so blinded by their victory, they couldn't see the Trojan horse they had just welcomed into their home. My silence and compliance were my shield and my sword. I didn't argue. I didn't make a scene. I simply agreed. This placated them so completely that they immediately returned to their conversation about paint swatches, dismissing me from their minds as a problem that had been solved. But my evening was just beginning. I went to my room, closed the door, and got to work. My phone became my command center. My first call was to a 24-hour moving company. Yes, hello? I need to book your largest truck for tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. sharp. I need at least 2 men, and they need to be efficient. My second call was to a self-storage facility near my new office. Hi. I need your largest climate-controlled unit. Yes, starting tomorrow. I'll be there in the afternoon to sign the paperwork. Then the utilities. I went online. The cable and high-speed internet package, which was under my name and paid from my account, was scheduled for disconnection. End of service date. Tomorrow, 5 p.m. The premium streaming services I paid for, subscriptions canceled. With every call made, with every confirm button clicked, I felt another chain breaking. I was methodically, surgically, and silently dismantling the infrastructure of their comfortable lives, and they were completely oblivious, their laughter echoing from the other room. Late that night, long after the house had fallen silent, I did a final walkthrough. It wasn't sentimental. It was an audit. I had a roll of tiny green dot stickers in my hand, the plush leather sofa and matching armchair in the living room. Green dot. Paid for over 12 months, the final payment made just 3 months ago. The 65-inch 4K smart TV. Green dot. A birthday gift to myself 2 years ago. The solid oak dining table and 6 matching chairs. Green dot. Bought to replace the rickety old one my parents had owned for 30 years. The kitchen was a sea of green dots. The stainless steel refrigerator. The high-end dishwasher. The microwave. The stand mixer my mother loved but I had paid for. The entire set of pots, pans, and cutlery. The washer and dryer in the laundry room. Green dots. For 5 long years, I had bled myself dry. My time, my energy, my finances, to turn this house into a home. A comfortable, modern, functioning home. I did it for them out of a misguided sense of duty and love. But they had made it perfectly, brutally clear. I was not part of the them that mattered. So I was taking my home with me. All the pieces I had bought and paid for. They were sleeping peacefully in their beds, dreaming of their bright future in my room. They had no idea that the very ground beneath their feet was about to disappear. The moving truck, a behemoth of a vehicle that groaned as it parked, arrived at precisely 8 o'clock Sunday morning. Its arrival was quiet, almost stealthy. The neighborhood was still asleep, including the new masters of my house. I met the movers, 2 strong, silent men named Gus and Sal, at the door with a box of donuts and 2 large coffees. "Morning, guys," I said, keeping my voice down. "The plan is simple. Everything with a small green sticker on it goes on the truck. Everything else, don't touch it. We need to be fast and quiet." Gus, the older of the 2, did a quick walkthrough and let out a low whistle. "Boss, these little green stickers. They're on pretty much everything that isn't nailed down." "That's the idea," I said with a thin smile. They worked with a stunning, almost military, efficiency. There was no wasted motion. The living room was stripped bare first. The sofa was wrapped in protective plastic, hoisted up, and maneuvered out the door with what seemed like impossible ease. The entertainment center and the massive TV followed. The dining table was expertly disassembled and carried out in pieces. I worked alongside them, a man possessed. I disconnected the heavy-duty washer and dryer, draining the hoses into a bucket. I went through the kitchen like a whirlwind, carefully packing every plate, bowl, and glass I had ever purchased into cardboard boxes. The spice rack, the knife block, the coffee machine, it all went. Around 9:30, just as Gus and Sal were carrying out my mahogany bookshelf, our next-door neighbor, Mrs. Gable, came out onto her porch to get her morning paper. She was a tiny woman in her 80s, with sharp, observant eyes. She had been a constant presence my whole life, a living history of our street. She had given me cookies when I was a boy and had watched me grow into the man who spent his weekends fixing his parents' house. She stood there in her fluffy pink bathrobe, her brow crinkled in confusion. "Liam, honey? What in heaven's name is going on? Are your parents finally getting new furniture?" I walked across the lawn to her, wiping a streak of dust from my forehead. "Morning, Mrs. Gable." "No, not exactly. I'm moving out." Her sharp eyes took in the scene, the sheer volume of things being loaded onto the massive truck, the methodical way the house was being emptied. Her confusion melted away, replaced by a look of profound understanding. "Moving out?" she said softly. "But dear, you're taking everything." "I'm just taking what belongs to me, Mrs. Gable," I replied, and the weariness of the last 5 years was heavy in my voice. She reached out and patted my arm, her touch surprisingly firm. "I remember when your grandfather was so proud of you for fixing that leaky roof all by yourself. He told me, 'That boy has a builder's heart, but he gives too much of it away.' You have been the glue holding that house together since the day he died. Don't you ever forget that." Her words were a validation I didn't know I desperately needed. Someone had seen. Someone had kept score. "Thank you," I whispered, my throat tight. "I won't." By noon, the job was done. The truck was packed to capacity. The house was a hollowed-out carcass. It was an echo chamber of bare floors and empty walls. The only things left were the old, worn-out furniture my grandfather had left behind, pieces that now looked small and pathetic in the vast, empty rooms. The house no longer felt like a home. It looked like a sad, forgotten stage after the play has ended. And upstairs, my family, the oblivious actors, were still fast asleep. The last bastion of my life in that house was the small room off the kitchen that I had converted into a home office. It was my command center, the one space that was unequivocally mine, filled with my books, my computer, and my meticulously organized files. As Gus and Sal made their final sweep, I focused on clearing out the last filing cabinet drawer. It was a junk drawer of sorts, filled with old receipts for tax purposes, warranties for appliances now on the truck, and miscellaneous paperwork. My hand was sweeping the contents into a trash bag when my fingers brushed against a thick, crisp manila envelope I didn't recognize. It was wedged at the very back. Unlike my own neatly labeled folders, this one had a simple, handwritten label, Household Finances, 2021. I frowned. This wasn't mine. I had managed my own finances, but I had given up trying to manage my parents years ago. This must have gotten mixed in with my papers during some past tax season. My first impulse was to leave it. It wasn't my business. But something, a cold, calculating instinct that had been awakened in me over the last 24 hours, made me pause. I took the envelope and sat on the floor of the empty room. I opened the metal clasp and slid the contents out. It was a stack of my parents' joint savings account statements from 3 years prior. I remembered that year all too well. It was the year of Mark, the entrepreneur. He had quit his perfectly good sales job to launch his own digital marketing consultancy, a vague and ill-defined venture that seemed to involve a lot of time at the golf course. Chloe had been insufferably proud, telling everyone her husband was a visionary. My eyes scanned the columns of deposits and withdrawals, and then I saw it. One single transaction on the May statement, a withdrawal, an enormous one, $50,000. My breath caught in my throat. I remembered that spring vividly. My parents had suddenly become incredibly stressed about money. They had complained about an unexpected property tax hike and a jump in their insurance premiums. They'd been so convincing that I had voluntarily increased my monthly contribution to the household, taking on the full cost of the gas and electric bills to help them out. But this single line item on this forgotten bank statement told a different story. The account, which had held their life savings, my grandfather's legacy, had been drained to just a few $100s. A $50,000 withdrawal, right at the exact time their new son-in-law, Mark, was launching his dream. It was a puzzle piece. I didn't know the full shape of the puzzle yet, but I knew this piece was critical. It felt heavy in my hand, dense with secrets and lies. The old Liam would have put it back, ashamed of prying. The new Liam, the one who was currently evacuating his life, folded the statement with clinical precision and slipped it into the inside pocket of his jacket. It lay against my chest, a cold square of truth. "That's the last of it, boss," Gus said from the doorway, startling me. "We're all loaded up, ready to hit the road." I stood up and took one final, sweeping look around the hollowed-out house. I walked into the kitchen and placed my set of keys on the bare, stained countertop. They made a small, lonely sound in the vast silence. Then I walked out the front door, pulling it shut behind me. I didn't wait for the click. I didn't look back. I got in my car and followed the moving truck down the street, driving away from my past and towards an unknown future, leaving behind a ticking time bomb set to detonate the moment my family finally woke up to the nightmare they had created. The first call came at 2:17 p.m. I know the exact time because I was just plugging in my television in my new apartment. It was a clean, minimalist space on the 7th floor, with a wide window that looked out over the city skyline. It was smaller than the house, but it was mine. Gus and Sal had just left, after I'd given them a generous tip for their stealth and efficiency. I was unboxing my coffee maker, the symbol of a new morning, when my phone screen lit up with my mother's face. I stared at it for a moment, then pressed the ignore button. A minute later, it buzzed again. My father. I ignored that one, too. Then came the barrage of texts from Chloe. They were a masterclass in escalating panic. The first, all caps, "Where is all the furniture?" The second, 30 seconds later, "Liam, this isn't funny. Did you get robbed?" The third, a minute after that, "Wait, you did this. You took everything. Call me right now." I read the texts, a strange sense of detachment washing over me. I took a deep breath and blocked her number. Then I blocked my parents' numbers. The ensuing silence was the most profound and peaceful sound I had ever heard. I spent the rest of the day in a blur of activity, unpacking boxes, arranging furniture, creating a home from the pieces of my old life. I ordered a pizza from a local place, drank a cold beer straight from the bottle, and for the first time in 5 years, I felt completely and utterly at peace. That peace was shattered at 10 o'clock the next morning. I was at my new desk, in my new office, a sleek, modern space humming with productive energy. My new boss, David, a sharp, no-nonsense guy who had been the one to recommend me to the CEO, was walking me through the schematics for the downtown tower project. My career was starting for real this time. Suddenly, the soft voice of the receptionist came through my desk phone's intercom. "Liam, I'm sorry to bother you, but there's a family here in the lobby to see you. A Richard, an Eleanor, and a Chloe. They seem quite agitated." My blood turned to ice water. How in the world did they find me? I hadn't told a soul where I was working except for... Oh no. David saw the color drain from my face. "Everything okay, man?" "Yeah." I lied, my voice tight. "Just some unexpected family drama. Could you please tell them I'm in an all-day meeting and can't be disturbed?" The receptionist relayed the message. It was like throwing a match on a puddle of gasoline. I could hear my father's voice bellowing even from down the long hallway. "I don't care if he's in a meeting with the Pope. You get my son out here right now." The entire office went silent. Heads popped up over cubicle walls. It was a corporate nightmare. Within moments, 2 building security guards were briskly walking toward the lobby. I couldn't bear to watch, but I couldn't look away. I saw them from the end of the hall, escorting my fuming, gesticulating family out of the glass front doors. My mother was sobbing hysterically. Chloe looked like she was spitting fire. My father's face was a mask of pure, murderous rage. The humiliation was a physical wave that washed over me. My new colleagues were studiously avoiding my eyes. My professional life had begun with a three-ring circus of my family's making. During my lunch break, a break I took in my car just to get away, I called Michael, my so-called best friend since kindergarten, the only person I had trusted with the news of my escape. "Michael, what did you do?" I asked, no preamble. He had the grace to sound ashamed. "Look, Liam, I'm sorry." Chloe called me. She was frantic. She said you just vanished, emptied the house, and they were all worried sick that something terrible had happened to you. And you fell for that? After everything I've told you over the years. She started talking about some big family inheritance that was about to be paid out. He stammered, his voice weak. She said there had been a huge misunderstanding and that if I helped her get in touch with you to clear it all up, she would make sure I was handsomely rewarded. Man, you know I've got all that student loan debt. The betrayal was so venal, so cheap, it almost made me laugh. He had sold our 20-year friendship for a lie, for a phantom payday whispered by a manipulative narcissist. "Wow," I said softly. "Just, wow." I hung up the phone and blocked his number, too. My world was shrinking, but the people left in it were solid. That evening I knew I couldn't hide. This had to end. The confrontation was inevitable, and it would be better on my terms, not in the lobby of my new job. I drove to the old house, the one that was no longer mine. Their car was in the driveway. I sat in my car for a long moment, took a deep breath, and felt the crisp edges of the folded bank statement in my jacket pocket. It was my only weapon. I got out, walked up the familiar path, and rang the bell. My father ripped the door open so hard it banged against the wall. His face was a thundercloud, his eyes spitting lightning. "You have a hell of a lot of nerve showing your face here after embarrassing me at your new job," he snarled. "I came to finish this," I said, my voice unervingly calm. I stepped past him into the cavernous living room. The emptiness was shocking. Their few remaining pieces of furniture looked like sad, forgotten relics in a museum of failure. My mother and Chloe were sitting on the dusty floor, their faces stained with tears and rage. Mark was hovering near the empty kitchen, looking deeply uncomfortable. "Finish this?" my mother shrieked, scrambling to her feet. "You gut our home, you steal our possessions, you humiliate us in public, and you want to finish this? You are a selfish, cruel, ungrateful child." "Liam, I didn't steal anything, Mom," I said, my voice as steady as a rock. "I took what was mine. I have receipts for every single item that left this house. I took the things I paid for with my own salary. The salary I earned while I was also paying your mortgage, your utilities, and buying your food. For 5 years. We gave you a roof over your head. We let you live here," my father boomed, his face turning a dangerous shade of red. "Did you?" I shot back, the ice in my veins finally starting to burn. "Or did I keep a roof over yours? Who climbed up on that roof in a storm to patch the leak? Who paid the $1,000 property tax bill last year when you said you were short? Who paid for the food in the pantry that you're going to eat for dinner tonight?" A thick, damning silence filled the room. They had no answer because the truth was an inconvenient stranger. It was Chloe who finally broke the standoff, her voice a low, venomous hiss. "This is all just a game to you, isn't it? You did this to be cruel. You did this to ruin everything for us. Right when we finally came home. Right when we needed our family's support the most." She took a step toward me, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "What is wrong with you? We came home. And you do this. Mom and Dad promised us. They promised us the money from Grandpa's inheritance was here, waiting for us. Was this your sick plan all along? To steal that too?" And there it was. The word. Inheritance. The real, ugly reason for their homecoming. It wasn't about family support. It was never about love. It was about a payday. A slow, cold, humorless smile touched my lips. I reached into my jacket pocket, my movements deliberate. I pulled out the folded, worn bank statement. I held it out to her between my thumb and forefinger. "What inheritance, Chloe?" I asked softly. She snatched the paper from my hand as if it were a winning lottery ticket. I watched her face as she read it. It was a fascinating, terrible spectacle. Her eyes, wide with greedy anticipation, scanned the page. I saw the moment her brain registered the date 3 years ago. I saw the confusion as she scanned the columns. And then I saw the exact moment her eyes landed on the $50,000 withdrawal and the near-zero balance at the bottom. The color drained from her face. The paper trembled in her hand. This is from 3 years ago," she stammered, looking up, her eyes wild with panic. "It says, the account is empty. This is fake. You faked this." She whirled around, shoving the paper at our parents. "He's lying. Isn't he? He's a liar. Dad, tell me he's lying." My father stared at a spot on the bare floor, his jaw working silently. My mother dissolved into pathetic, gulping sobs. "The inheritance is gone, Chloe," I said, my voice cutting through my mother's cries. "It's been gone for a long, long time, and I think we all know where it went." My eyes flicked over to Mark, who suddenly looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. $50,000. That's a heck of a seed investment for a digital marketing consultancy. Isn't it, Mark? The final, ugly truth hung in the air, thick and poisonous. Chloe looked from my face to Mark's, then to our weeping mother and silent father. The betrayal dawned on her face, a slow, horrifying sunrise of understanding. You told me the money was here," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You let us lose our apartment. You told us to come home, that everything would be okay. You lied to me," and my mother, through her shuddering sobs, finally gave up the ghost. "We just wanted you home, sweetie. We missed you so much. We knew Mark was having a hard time, and we just wanted to help our little girl. They had set a trap for her, baited with my grandfather's legacy. A trap to get their golden child back, no matter the cost, no matter who got hurt in the process. This was the moment that changed everything, when I finally took back control of my own life. Thank you for sticking with me to this point. You are amazing. Do me a favor and hit that like button and comment the number 1 down below, just so I know you made it this far with me. It doesn't just help more people find this story. It lets me know that my experiences mean something to someone out there. Your support is the biggest reason I can keep sharing the rest of this journey. My mother's confession was the spark that ignited the powder keg. The unified front of my family, their collective rage directed at me, shattered in an instant. The anger, now without a target, turned inward, and they began to devour each other. Chloe was a woman possessed. She advanced on our mother, her face a twisted mask of rage and betrayal. "You wanted me home? You missed me?" she screamed, her voice cracking. "Or you were just embarrassed? You couldn't stand being the parents of a daughter whose husband lost his job? You used me. You used my love for you as a leash to drag me back here." "That's not true, sweetheart. We did it for you," my mother wailed, holding her hands up as if to ward off the words. "For me," Chloe laughed, a sharp, broken sound that echoed in the empty room. "You let us pack up our entire lives, get evicted from our apartment, and drive halfway across the country, all based on a lie. What was your plan, Mom? To have us live here dependent on you while Liam paid for everything. Was that the brilliant plan?" Mark, the silent freeloader, suddenly found his voice, seeing an opportunity to paint himself as a victim. "I told you it sounded fishy, Chloe," he said, puffing out his chest. "I said we should have verified the funds first. That $50,000, it wasn't inheritance. It was an investment in my company. An investment I was fully intending to pay back with interest. This was too much even for my father." He finally erupted, turning the full force of his fury on Mark. "Pay it back? With what? You haven't signed a single client in 3 years. Your company is a laptop and a stack of business cards you printed for free online. It takes time to build a brand. You have to speculate to accumulate." Mark shot back, his voice rising to a panicked squeak. "It takes money to pay the mortgage," my father roared, taking a menacing step toward him. "Money you took from us. From my father's legacy." It was a spectacular, ugly implosion. A ballet of dysfunction. They were a pack of wolves, turning on each other now that the original prey had escaped. Years of buried resentments, of unspoken disappointments, came spewing out in a torrent of vitriol. Chloe accused my parents of always using money to control her. My mother accused my father of being weak and letting Mark walk all over him. My father accused Mark of being a worthless conman. I stood by the door, an observer to the carnage. I had been the glue, the buffer, the lightning rod for all their dysfunction for so long. Without me in the middle, they had no choice but to face the truth of what they were. A collection of selfish, broken people, trapped in a web of their own making. The shouting continued, a cacophony of blame and self-pity. I realized with a sudden, startling clarity that they didn't just need my money to keep the lights on. They needed me to absorb their poison. I was the family scapegoat, the emotional landfill where they dumped all their failures and frustrations. And now the landfill was closed for business. The garbage was piling up right in the middle of their empty living room, and they were all choking on the stench. I had seen more than enough. I waited for a moment of savage, breathless silence. A brief pause in the storm as they all reloaded for the next volley of accusations. In that quiet, I walked to the center of the room and placed a thick, legal-sized folder on the bare hardwood floor. It landed with a soft, definitive thud. "What the hell is that?" my father asked, his voice raw and gravelly from yelling. "It's a copy of the current mortgage statement," I said, my voice cutting through the tension like a surgeon's scalpel. "It's also got the latest property tax assessment, the homeowner's insurance policy, and a list of contact numbers for the electric, gas, and water companies." I looked directly at my mother, then at my father. Their faces were blank with confusion. "The house, the mortgage, it's all still in your names. As of the 1st of next month, all the utility bills that were on autopay from my bank account will be canceled. You're going to need to call them and set up your own payment arrangements." Chloe stared at the folder on the floor as if it were a live grenade. You're just going to walk away? And leave us with all this debt?" A dry, humorless laugh escaped my lips. "Leave you with it? Chloe, this isn't your debt. This is the weight I have been carrying for you. For all of you. For 5 years." My voice grew stronger, each word a hammer blow of truth. "I didn't just give you my room. I gave you my 20s. I gave you my savings account. I gave up a career I had dreamed of since I was a kid so I could stay here and hold this family together after Grandpa died. And what was my reward? What was my thank you? You threw me out without a second thought the moment your golden child decided she wanted to come home for a handout she hadn't earned." My mother had the gall to look wounded, tears welling in her eyes again. "But we're your family, Liam. You're supposed to help your family. A family doesn't treat one of its own like a piece of disposable equipment," I said, my voice as hard and cold as iron. "You didn't want a son. You wanted a live-in maintenance man and an ATM. And you," I said, turning my gaze to Chloe, who flinched, "you didn't want a brother. You wanted a safety net you never had to contribute to." I walked to the front door and pulled it open, letting the cool night air rush in. I paused on the threshold, turning back to look at the three of them, a pathetic tableau of ruin in the empty house. "You wanted her back so badly, Mom," I said, my voice softening, not with forgiveness, but with a chilling finality. "Now you have her. Live with her." I looked at Chloe one last time, her face a mess of tears and dawning horror as the reality of her new responsibilities began to sink in. "Take care of them," I said. "It's your turn to be the responsible one." And then I turned and walked out into the darkness. I didn't slam the door. I didn't need to. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove away. I never once looked in the rearview mirror. There was nothing back there for me anymore. The 4 months that followed were an education in what it feels like to breathe. Without the crushing weight of my family's needs, their expectations, and their constant, subtle belittling, the world felt lighter. The air seemed fresher. Colors looked brighter. My new job was not just a job. It was a calling. The work was demanding, complex, and deeply satisfying. And for the first time in my professional life, I was seen. I was valued. Mr. Harrison, the CEO, became an unlikely mentor. He'd stop by my desk to check on my progress, not as an overlord, but as a fellow builder. Loyalty and a strong foundation, Liam, he told me once, clapping me on the shoulder after a successful project review. That's what makes a skyscraper stand, and it's what makes a man stand tall. We're glad to have you. Words like that from a man like him were the validation my own father had never given me. I didn't just work hard. I thrived. I poured all the energy I had once spent on fixing leaky faucets and placating my mother's moods into my career. My boss, David, became more than a colleague. He became the brother I never really had. We'd grab beers after a long week, and I'd slowly, hesitantly, tell him pieces of my story. He never offered cheap pity. He'd just listen, shake his head, and say, "Man, that's messed up. Good for you for finally choosing yourself." I was building a new life, brick by brick, just as I had once rebuilt that old house. But this time, the blueprint was my own. I explored the city, found a small gym, and started the clumsy, awkward process of dating again. I was discovering Liam. Not the son, not the brother, not the handyman. Just Liam. And I was starting to like him. One rainy afternoon, David walked over to my desk, holding his phone out. "Dude, check this out," he said, his voice low. It was a real estate listing. For my old house. A cheap for sale sign was hammered into the lawn I had meticulously kept free of weeds. The online description was a masterpiece of desperate real estate jargon. Charming fixer-upper with great bones. A blank canvas awaiting your personal touch. Tons of potential. I clicked through the photos. The house was a ghost. Still mostly empty. The bare rooms looked sad, cavernous, and cold. They hadn't even bothered to repaint my old room. The calm blue was still on the walls, a silent testament to a life that had been erased. "Guess they couldn't swing it," David said quietly. "I guess not," I replied, a strange cocktail of melancholy and vindication swirling in my chest. That house held so much of my history, so much of my pain. But seeing it like this, a hollowed-out shell being sold at a discount, I felt a final sense of closure. It was never really mine to begin with. A few weeks later, the for sale sign was replaced by a sold sign. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that they had sold it at a steep loss, just enough to pay off the bank and escape foreclosure. The family I had left behind was spiraling. My mother was working as a receptionist at a dental clinic. My father, his pride shattered, was a night security guard at a warehouse. And Chloe, the golden child with the brilliant future, was a waitress at a 24-hour diner. Her designer handbags traded for a stained apron. They were all crammed into a small, run-down two-bedroom apartment by the highway. The irony was not lost on me. They had offered me a concrete box in the basement, and now the three of them were living in one. The same day I heard the house had officially sold, Mr. Harrison called me into his glass-walled office overlooking the city. He told me the partners were not just pleased, but deeply impressed with my work ethic and innovative solutions on the tower project. Then he offered me a promotion, senior project manager. It came with a corner office, a significant salary increase, and the kind of responsibility I had always craved. Life, it seemed, had a dark but ultimately fair sense of humor. A week after my promotion, as I was still getting used to the view from my new corner office, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but a strange impulse made me answer. "Am I speaking with Mr. Liam Evans?" The voice on the other end was formal, dry as old paper. "This is he. Mr. Evans, my name is Arthur Finch of Finch, Covington & Dunn. I was your grandfather, Michael Evans, personal attorney and the executor of his estate." My heart did a slow, heavy lurch. "Is something wrong? Has something happened?" "Quite the contrary, son," the old lawyer replied, his voice softening. "Something quite remarkable has happened. The new owners of your grandfather's property were clearing out that old workshop he had in the back of the garage. It seems that behind a loose floorboard, they found a small, locked safe box. A box that, I must admit, was missed during the initial estate inventory 5 years ago. He explained that they had brought the box to him, and as executor he had it opened. Inside there was no cash, no jewelry. Just a single, thick, sealed envelope with my name written on the front in my grandfather's familiar, strong script. My hands were unsteady on the steering wheel as I drove to his stately downtown law office. The building smelled of old books and money. Mr. Finch, a distinguished man with a kind face and a shock of white hair, greeted me with a firm handshake. He handed me the envelope. It was heavy, made of thick, creamy paper, and felt important. My name, Liam, was written across the front. I didn't open it there. I took it back to my car, the privacy of my own space. With trembling fingers, I broke the seal. Inside, there were 2 documents, a letter and an official certificate for a trust fund. I unfolded the letter first. My dearest Liam, if you are reading this, then it means I am gone, and the world has finally led you to this little secret of mine. I am writing this because an old man sees more than he lets on. I see the way they treat you, son. I see how your parents are so dazzled by your sister's fireworks that they fail to see the steady, burning flame right beside them. I see the weight they let you carry, a weight that is not yours, but you carry it anyway because you have a good and noble heart. They are my children, and I love them, but they are flawed. They are blind to the quiet strength, the unwavering loyalty that you possess. I watched you that summer you were 16, when you gave up your days with your friends to reshingle this very roof because you knew I couldn't do it myself. I saw you, time and time again, quietly putting your own needs aside for the good of this family. You have a builder's heart, Liam. A creator's heart. Don't you ever let their blindness make you doubt the light you carry. I have left the house to your parents. It is their home. But I have set this aside for you and only for you. It's not a king's ransom, but it is a foundation. A foundation that is yours and yours alone, with no strings attached. Use it to build your own house, your own life, your own dream. Be your own man, free from the shadows of this family. You have earned this and so much more. Always know that your old grandpa saw you, and he was so proud. Love, Grandpa. I leaned my forehead against the cool glass of the steering wheel, and a dam inside me that had stood for 28 years finally broke. I wept, not for the pain, not for the anger, but for the sheer, overwhelming relief of being seen. The trust fund was significant, a final, generous gift from the man who had taught me how to build. But it was the letter that was the real inheritance. It was the validation I had spent my entire life starving for. My sacrifice hadn't been in vain. It hadn't been invisible. My grandfather, the man I admired most in the world, had seen everything, and he had made sure I knew it. It's been a full year now. A year since I walked out of that hollowed-out house and into my own life. The quiet that once felt like loneliness now feels like peace. The solitude that once felt like isolation now feels like freedom. I used the money my grandfather left me not for something flashy or extravagant, but for a down payment on a small, well-built condo of my own. It's on a high floor, with a balcony that looks out over the mountains. It is my foundation, built on love and recognition, not on obligation and resentment. My work continues to be my passion. The promotion has led to more responsibility, bigger projects, and a sense of accomplishment that is entirely my own. I'm building things that will last, tangible structures of steel and glass that will change the city's skyline. It feels like I'm finally doing what I was always meant to do, using my builder's heart for its intended purpose. The silence from my family has been absolute. I know, through the whispers of the neighborhood grapevine, that their life is a struggle. They are trapped together in that small apartment, a cramped prison of their own making, working jobs they hate to make ends meet. Sometimes, late at night, I feel a faint echo of something. Not guilt, but a distant, abstract sadness for the family we could have been, for the love that was squandered. But I know, with a certainty that has settled deep in my bones, that you cannot build anything lasting on a foundation of lies. I learned the hardest and most valuable lesson of my life that weekend. I learned that sometimes the most profound act of love is not staying, but leaving. The most important boundary you can set is the one that protects your own soul. You cannot set yourself on fire to keep others warm. I spent 5 years as human kindling, and all I have to show for it are the scars. They thought I was a disposable part of the house, a fixture they could remove and replace at will. They never understood that I wasn't a fixture. I was the load-bearing wall. And when I removed myself, the whole unstable structure came crashing down. The anger is gone now, burned away by time and distance. In its place is a quiet strength. I am free. Free from the crushing weight of their expectations. Free from the long shadow of the golden child. I am no longer just a son or a brother. I am Liam, the builder. And for the first time in my entire life, that feels like everything I ever need to be. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it resonated with you in some way. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between your family and your own well-being? Share your story in the comments below. And please, don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss what I share next. Your support truly means the world.